high school was interesting because it was much more integrated than Englewood Cliffs. Englewood Cliffs being, again, just millionaire row. And so I got beat up a lot, and so did Dana. But we started to thrive. Again, Dana, being my best friend and being an A student, I would hang out with him. I would hang out with Jim. And at some point, Dana decided to start a student store. Okay. And the reason I mention this is nobody knew that we were starting a student store. So we made a deal with the principal that in the morning when they did the intercom, kids got to your class, they would always do a morning chat of some sort. And Dana and I would do a little comedy bit at the beginning. Morning, David. Morning, Dana. We're here to talk about the student store. Okay. Not knowing that I'd be on radio in a few years, but all of a sudden, I went to Dwight Morrow High School, which was a huge high school and had people from Englewood, Tenafly, Englewood Cliffs, gigantic. John Travolta was in my class, met him freshman year. John didn't graduate, but nice guy, good guy. Greaser, though, he and Joey Travolta, his brother, they were very different because this was this is 1968 when I went, and 69, and everybody was starting, the long hairs, and bell bottoms. The bigger your bell bottoms, the more popular you were. And, the Beatles were still together. Beatles changed my life in 64 when they came out. I was 10 years old, played that to death. And, we'd form groups. Everybody did, in high school. We'd play together. It was just, high school was pretty great. And I learned a lot, and the teachers liked me a lot.
Your morning announcement show?
Well, yeah, it got me not more popular, but people was, hey, you're that guy on the intercom, and more people knew me, and I wasn't getting beat up anymore. So that kind of worked. Suffice to say, that student store did not work. And it was what were we selling? Notebooks and paper and pencils. I forget how we got it. I know Dana did that. I certainly didn't, right? But nobody came to the student store, and it lasted maybe a month. But at least, we got on the intercom and such. Senior year was interesting, and I want to say this, excuse me, to younger viewers. It was 1972, and that I was going to graduate high school. And there was something called the Vietnam War going on, and people like, my heroes, people like John Lennon and other folks, nobody in high school was for the Vietnam War, and Nixon was president. And I'm going to turn 18, in 72. I was born in 54. So back then, there was something called the draft. And the way the draft worked at that point, they had 365 ping pong balls. I know this sounds like a game show, but it wasn't, and it's true. 365 ping pong balls, and they would assign each ball to a different date of the year, okay? And that defined so they thought that was fair, who's gonna be drafted first. And August 3rd is when I was born, and August 3rd was number 3, the number 3 ping pong ball. So there was, out of 365, I'm number 3. That meant I was definitely going to Vietnam. And my parents started talking about sending me off to Canada, but it was never clear to me, it was like, oh, good, mom and dad are going to pay for me to go. Where in Canada? Where am I going to stay? I'd never left the house. I'm a high school kid. Luckily, and very luckily, and you could look this up, kids, they ended the draft in 72 and never reinstituted it. So 1972, for my year, they stopped the draft. The war, we'll say, stopped shortly after. You and I know They were still fighting over there, but we got out of the war. We switched presidents and we moved on. And I went to college. And I won't talk too much about college because I know you want to get to a career, but went to Rutgers University. I realized early on that I was a good writer. I loved in my spare time. And again, a lot of this comes from watching movies. I had a lot of ideas and I would write, and I read a lot of science fiction, especially. And I was writing and writing, so much so that in 7th grade, I'll never forget this, we had a new teacher, and didn't have Jim, didn't have Dana with me, my good friends, because you would switch out classes and, you'd want to be with your best friend, but, oh, they're in the other class. Anyway, so new teacher, 7th grade, and she gave us an assignment in social studies. Why the hell was it called social studies? History, okay. Anyway, in socials, we could write something, an article on the FBI or this on the FBI, or you could write a short story, okay? So I wrote a short story, make a long story short, make a long story
Which is
short.
a good one if you're making a short story.
Okay. Yeah, pun in there somewhere. And the teacher, a couple days later, says, David Greenfield? Oh, me, yeah, I'm the only one. She accused me of plagiarism, okay? Like anybody, like there are a lot of FBI stories out there to plagiarize. Again, there were no computers. And what amazes me, I guess still, was all the kids in the class. I mean, one kid started and said, no, Miss, I won't say her name. No. That's the way David writes. And the entire class came to my rescue saying, no, you don't know David. That's what he is. He's a writer. In fact, just sticking with that, in 8th grade, again, because we were upscale school, we had a graduation book, and everybody had a little line of what everybody had decided. This person's going to be a doctor in the future. And everybody said David would be a prolific writer, which happened to be true. So anyway, so moving on to Rutgers, I got into a bunch of schools other than Rutgers, unnecessary. But Dad had decided I'm going to Rutgers because Rutgers was a state school and it was a hell of a lot cheaper than going to Princeton. So I wasn't thrilled about going to Rutgers. New Brunswick, not the loveliest town in New Jersey, although New Jersey is called the Garden State and much of New Jersey is beautiful, despite what people may have heard. And Rutgers was a dream for me for a number of reasons. The stigma of grade school and high school and the stutter and the lisp and not being terribly popular, but not the popular one. I realized, when I went to Rutgers, I decided to try and, this will sound odd, but be more outgoing. And I knew I could be funny, but just have kind of a bigger personality. That's not a great way to explain it, but instead of being just the more shy, retiring kid, I still couldn't raise my hand. I was the last person that would raise my hand in class, but I was lucky in that freshman year, there was a kid that was on the radio station, and he was very popular, but he's more of an AM DJ, and he talked like this. But we had an FM station at Rutgers, and I decided freshman year, I would give it a shot if they would let me, and they did. And so my first indoctrination, I guess, into any kind of entertainment was doing a morning show Saturdays and Sunday mornings, 6 a.m., like anybody's listening. But see, the great thing about Rutgers, it being in New Brunswick, we could reach Southern Manhattan, okay, from about 57th Street downtown to the Village, Little Italy, et cetera, Battery Park. So I could reach those areas. And back then, by being on in the morning, I would have to turn on the radio station itself. And you needed what's called a third-class operator's endorsed license to turn on the radio. Now, with that knowledge, you would turn the dials up, but you couldn't turn them up too much because turning them up too much, while it would increase the audience, it was infringing upon other radio stations within that. Like if you were 93.2 FM, whoever's at 93.4 FM, you're infringing into their area. But I didn't care. I wanted to be heard. Nobody else is around at 6 o'clock. It's snowing outside. Not all the time, but in the winter it does snow. So I would crank it up a little bit, and I started to get an audience. And we'll just fast forward. I did very well with the radio station. And by my senior year, I was not only program director of the radio station, but I had my choice of any shows that I wanted to do. So I chose Thursday nights. I was on from 8 till I think 11. And then I would occasionally do other shows. But as program director, I picked the best of the DJs. And back then, we really prided ourselves on our segues. If I was doing a radio show, the music we'd play, for example, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes ends, right? So from there, you'd go to Van Morrison. And I would impress upon all my DJs, and that's the way I would do my, to have those kind of segues. Don't just play a song and then another song. But it was really my ability to speak. And I can't really remember if I was terribly humorous. I don't think I was, but occasionally I would be. But that allowed me to announce all the people that would come to the gym. Billy Joel, later when Bruce became Bruce Springsteen, who I got to know very well, came into the studio, did a lot of stuff live for us. When Bruce finally got to the gym, I would announce him. And again, I was very well known at Rutgers. Also by senior year, I had taken acting, and I loved acting. But you got to understand, growing up in a Jewish family from New York, they'd all come from Russia. They'd escaped oppression, obviously, over in Europe. And it was, I'll use the word impressed. I'm more than impressed. You're going to be a doctor or you're going to be a lawyer. From the time you were a kid, that's what they would tell you. My grandmother, may she rest in peace, you're going to be a dentist. It's easy. You can be a dentist. Okay, well, it's not that easy and whatever. So because that was put upon me, I was initially pre-med, and I still remember, calling my parents, I decided I'm going to pursue an English major, not, hello, mom. Oh, she fainted. Okay, dad. Yeah, so that didn't go over well, but my parents let me do it. They say, hey, you want to be a writer. I don't know how you're going to live, but good luck. So switched over to writing. Anyway, so yeah, I was taking acting classes and I started performing in a few plays. And I had done that actually in summer camp. I don't mean to jump back and forth, but again, I was a really shy kid, and yet I had a great singing voice before my voice changed. And even in summer camp, they were doing Guys and Dolls, and they gave me the lead as Sky Masterson. And I was really shy. And yet when I still remember when I was doing that show and all eyes were on me, I was not nervous. Same thing with radio. Even though I couldn't raise my hand in class, even if I knew the answer, I could go on the radio, talk to hundreds of thousands of people, perhaps tens of thousands, I didn't count, and had no nerves whatsoever. So senior year, I'm in this play, a guy by the name of Neil Cuthbert. You may or may not know, he did a lot of Broadway shows, wrote a lot of Broadway shows, but he was at Rutgers, and there was a show called Buddy Pals, and we were supposed to do it 2 or 3 times. It was my senior year. I grew a mustache because I finally could. It was great. And the kid had to smoke cigarettes. So it was about 3 kids The mother went away for a while, 3 kids playing around at home, and then 2 kids get angry and they fight, and we do this death scene that we had seen like in a Warner Brothers film. Anyway, so we did it a few times, but it became immensely popular. They kept coming back to see it, and I had to keep growing my mustache back. Then, make a long story still too friggin' long, we were entered into the New England One Act Festival. So we went up to, in my memory, it was Boston. I could be wrong. We did it up there, went fine, whatever, came back, starting to grow my mustache back. They said, you guys won, and now you're going to perform down at the Kennedy Center in Washington. It's like, well, and it had just been built. Went down there, we did the play. Again, I had no nerves. I to this day, I don't understand. I mean, of course, you've got lines, you don't have to improvise. So, but still in all, a lot of actors get stage fright, but I had none. And I don't quite understand why I didn't. But I went out there and I thrived on the audience because, as soon as you get that first laugh or applause, you feed into that. And by the end of the play, I won Best Actor. Bob Harper was our director, rest in peace, just died a year ago. And Neil went on, and he did the show Buddy Pals again off Broadway without me because I had moved out to LA at that point. So that was college. It was a great experience for me because I had changed a lot from the kid in high school who was a little bit shy, and I certainly wasn't shy by my senior year of college rather, but I also realized, wow, there's a whole world out there. Can I maintain this biggish personality or charismatic or charming, pick your adjective, you don't create a personality, you find things in you that people react to, and you try and project those, and you kind of try and subjugate your fears or things that held you back in the past. How you do that, I don't know, ask a psychiatrist. But that was it, and it was great. I was speaker at graduation ceremonies. My grandmother, may she rest in peace, was there. I was the first speaker, and what was funny was I had to dedicate the class tree. That's not funny. It's still there, class of 76. And but we didn't have microphones. There were no remote microphones to do the class tree. So I had to do the megaphone. I forget what I said, but my grandmother's right over there, and I'm with a megaphone, and we'll remember this day for the rest of our lives, and then lives, and anyway.